Hello, welcome back to Loud and Proud Orlando. I am your host tonight, John Rollins, here to talk everything Orlando City. Luis sadly cannot be with us, and Paula is also unavailable tonight. So you just got me, but drop your comments in the chat. I want to talk with everybody who's here. I want to hear your thoughts on Orlando City. I want to know what you think about that 2-1 loss, especially, is probably where we'll kick it off today. We've already got a few comments in here already as well, so I want to get to those. But first, let's go through the agenda. Of course, we're going to talk about the 2-1 loss to Vancouver at home on Saturday night with a last-minute winner from Thomas Mueller. We're then going to check in on the International Lions, see how they're doing, because, of course, this was actually an international week. We're going to talk about the Orlando Storm being announced in Inter&Co Stadium. Then we're going to talk about the new seating section. Finally, we're going to look at the playoff picture. And the end of the show, we're going to talk about the last game of the season, which will be Toronto away. So it's going to be a very busy show here with us today. Bear with me as I kind of produce and also talk to you guys and read the chat and everything. So if I miss something, give me a break, but I am here to talk with you guys. As always, first comment of the day, Landon says, can't wait for this one. He says, should win this weekend versus Toronto, right? I hope so, Landon. David Alvarez says, Landon, don't jinx us, man. He says, hi, John, and terrible, heartbreaking loss. David, you've brought us on nicely to talking about the game. Yes, I think heartbreaking loss is I don't know if it's heartbreaking or somewhat expected, like in some ways, not to be so negative, but we've seen this before this season. And I think for me in the second half, it was the writing was on the wall that they were going to get the equalizer. You hope they wouldn't get the winner. And then it all kind of did. It was very reminiscent of the New York game, I believe, where we just collapsed at the last, 10 minutes of the game, gave away the 1-0 lead to go down to 1-1, and then ultimately gave up all 3 points to go 2-1. This in, a game that was vital in the table for us, a game that we really had to win if we wanted any aspirations of being a top 4 team. Not that I thought that was realistic, but at least trying to avoid at least having to be in the play-in game, affirm ourselves as playoffs for sure, right? Because there is a difference. In the 8th and 9th, you're in the playoffs, quote unquote, but you're not fully in the playoffs. So this was a really important game, and the boys started out well. I think the first half went pretty well. I think we looked hungry. We looked like a team that wanted to get on the ball, wanted to play, wanted to pass it around. And I think that counterattacking goal we saw from Dagger and Dunk was and Ojeda was really like the perfect counterattack and really what we want to see with the kind of clean clinical nature when they get up the field. I think Ojeda, you know, unselfishly plays the ball to Duncan, then Duncan really unselfishly makes a great header back across to Dagger Dan. Dagger Dan then is able to really nicely, calmly kind of get on the ball and finish it past the keeper. I mean, it was a beautiful goal. I want to kind of show you guys. We'll bring that up here. We'll go through that real quick as well. All right. So on the screen, we can see it was a nice counterattack. I mean, the first sort of 10, 20 minutes was all us. Well, no, they had some chances. It was back and forth as well, but we were more the dominant side. Of course, one of the early things we'll talk about in a minute is Jansen's injury as well that kind of impacted this game. But before that, let's look at the goal here. A really nice finish and counterattack. Action of the crowd in that moment, like you can just hear it on if you haven't gone back and watched the replay. I mean, the place just lit up. It was that sort of. There was a moment there where the ball hangs after Duncan's header, where it just sort of floating back in and the running through ball a late box run from him, right, to commit to say I'm going to get up there with Duncan and support him on that run. Ojeda puts the ball across, Duncan heads it down, and Dagger finished it. And that was 30 minutes in or so. I believe the goal was, let's see, I can't remember exactly. I think it's 24 minutes in. So that's, halfway through the first half. We're feeling good. We really then needed to go on and kind of capitalize and get that second goal. Of course, the lineup, we'll talk about that briefly before we get into the Jansen's injury. The lineup for this one, it's difficult when you have so many players out to figure out how to put the right team out there. We've seen Marin hasn't really adjusted well, but I don't, apart from putting Dagger down at left back, who was already playing at right back in this game, I don't know who else you could play there apart from Adrian Marin. Schlegel and Jansen, fine, but then Jansen got injured, like I said. We'll look at that in a second. Kyle Smith and Atuesta didn't have good games at all, but they can be good in the midfield. I just think they didn't control the game at all in the second half. Again, we'll talk more about that when we get on to the second half. The attacking three, Nico Rodriguez, Ojeda, and Angulo, and then Muriel up top in the striker position. I was surprised that he didn't start like a 4-4-2 like we've seen before, because we have seen iterations where Duncan and Muriel have been starting together up top. And then in that scenario, you don't start Nico Rodriguez and you sort of push Ojeda out to the right wing position and you let Angulo be the left wing. And it's sort of a 4-4-2, but Muriel's playing the 9 sort of pseudo striker role. We've seen that before. He went for the kind of just straight up, let's swap Nico Rodriguez in for Marco Pasalic, Kyle Smith in for the injured Jeron Sherbet. And then at right back, of course, Alex Freeman coming out and Dagger Dan Thoralson coming in there as well. But apart from that, it was pretty much, a Marin for Brekalo. So there you got 4 guys that I would arguably say aren't, might have had their starting position, been different if the other players were available. But most of the team is there. There are some starters not there, but it's the idea that we didn't have anybody, I think, is, too far to go with that. There was definitely some key players missing, but we also had a lot of very good players and our starters available for this game. They just didn't play very well. I mean, Kyle Smith and Atuesta, especially in the midfield, had a really bad game. The Jansen injury, it's not ideal, is it? It's sort of the last thing we wanted to see at this point in the season was Jansen's hands on the ground. I don't know if they play it again in the highlight pack. I don't think they do. But if you look here kind of far away, you can see there, right where I've paused it, he kind of like juts up on his right leg, like as he's getting tackled, and then where he lands on his right leg really awkwardly with the ground underneath him. It doesn't look good. And yeah, I think the ground chunks up a lot, which doesn't help. Like, it's not a smooth landing for him, but to say it's completely related to the turf, I think would probably be a stretch. It could be related to the turf. And we have seen this throughout the season, like in preseason, we saw it with Cartagena and Tsukada. The pitch doesn't look good again. I think all the wet weather we've had in the fall time has perhaps contributed to, more of the pitch coming up. We've seen recently in the games, whole chunks flying up in City and Pride games. There have been a lot of injuries throughout the year on our field, not only to our players, but in NWSL, we've seen injuries to other players. So I think the field is in need of replacement, or at least something really drastic, if not replacing. I think most likely they will go ahead and replace the whole field in the offseason. It's not so easy a thing to do, in the sense that you can't just do it in like 2 weeks. You need really like a long stretch of time where the grass is not being used, really like a month or so at minimum, like ideally 2 or 3 months. So it's something that every soccer club would have to do in the off season regardless. So I think when they realized they had these issues early in the year, they simply just said, we're gonna have to wait till the end of the year before we could do anything about it. But Jansen's, we'll have to see, but I don't think he's going to be in for the rest of the season. I would be shocked if we see Jansen again this year. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But yeah, I'm not too hopeful on that situation. All right, let's move on to further in the game. Really, the first half it was fairly even. We had our chances. They also had a lot of chances. He Let me just stop this a second. At the point where Kyle Smith got injured, he moved back into the midfield. Kyle Smith moved back into the defense. Dagger moved into the midfield. So he had Dagger and Adatuesta in the midfield. And I think we just weren't really able to get the ball back in the second half. I think that was the biggest issue that we had. We just were not able to do really anything. And it was just constant defense from us in that second half. We didn't get out and hold the ball. We didn't counterattack well. So it was just, as soon as we won the ball back, we seemed to give it back to them. And then we were just so penned in our own half. There was no real out ball. We weren't able to retain possession. And, I think both Dagger Dan, he spoke to that. I posted his quote on socials about what he said about the game. I'll read that to you now. Really, I think it speaks to what we've talked about a lot on the pod, or I've talked about, and the fact that we seem to go defensive with one down. And I thought a lot of people call it pappy ball and get very frustrated by how defensive we go. I don't know if it's always Oscar telling them to do that, or like in this scenario, it just seemed like we weren't able to have possession at all. Nobody stepped up and got on the ball, held possession, was able to get us to be calm and move forward and actually get out of our own half. We just sort of constantly gave it back to them. And Dagger says, I felt like we were defending for a very long time. That's something we need to look at. I don't know why we score. We drop down and defend for almost the rest of the game. We counterattack, yeah, but we need to keep the ball a little more. I think it is totally true. And Oscar said it as well. So he said they didn't have a good second half. I would argue and say that Oscar needed to get up in that second half off the bench and shout and scream at them to get on the ball and do something or change something. Like, I think we were too passive. And although we didn't really have the subs to change the game, you've got to try and find a way to get the players that you do have to do something, have a reaction, because it just sort of felt like the writing was on the wall the whole second half. It just kept coming and coming. And I think we all felt like it was going to be a 1-1, and we would have walked away from that and been like, okay, we played a good first half. They played a better second half. But the tide was just so great that they get that final goal. And it was an example there of Muller just, dancing through our team in the midfield where no one's stepping up to win the second ball. No one's challenging him. And then it's, just a bit too slow. And you let a guy like that play the ball and he'll punish you. So that's what happened. All right, we're going to read some comments and see what you guys have to say. Vinco Ramos says, good afternoon. Greetings from Peru. Greetings, Vinco. How are you? David Albury says, is there any kind of news on his injury yet? There's no news on his injury yet. I doubt the club. I mean, they don't announce anything. They just put it in the injury report. So as of on Friday, the injury report will come out for the Toronto game. And in that, we'll say most likely Jensen brackets ankle. And that's all we'll get. But I think I'd be shocked if we see him again the rest of the season. David Albert says, yeah, truth. I believe, David, you're probably talking about what I was saying about sitting back on one goal. and something that I think we've just all gotten very frustrated with under Oscar's regime. And I hoped that he had changed this year. Like we saw some signs of being more attacking and more aggressive team, trying to score multiple goals a game. But recently, it's kind of slipped back a little bit into that, trying to pappy ball it sometimes when we don't like that. Jeffrey O says Orlando City has jaded me. Yeah, I think you're not wrong in that, Jeffrey. I think a lot of people this weekend with that result, I've just sort of been like, well, that's it. Whatever happens in the playoffs, I don't think people are hopeful based on how we're going into the playoffs, based on our current form. It's I don't want to be all doom and gloom because this was a game where we were missing some players and it was against a very good opponent and we only lost 2-1. We did have half a good game, but at the moment we're not playing a complete game of soccer in many ways. We're not seeing out games. We're not scoring multiple goals a game. We're never keeping a clean sheet. So most of the time we're good for one goal a game, and then it really depends how many we're going to concede. And if that's the case, then the playoffs aren't going to go very well. So we really, the clinical nature of how we scored that first goal with Dagger Dan and Duncan, we need to see that consistently throughout the match. Those kind of chances being created and taken if we're going to play counterattacking football. And then on top of that, we need to see more defensive grit in the midfield and from the defensive back line to win the second ball, to close down the man, to, take that extra step because we're in do or die time. We're in the playoffs and they really can't be, bus stopping. Like on that Miller goal is a lot of what we call bus stopping, right? They're just standing around waiting for a bus when they need to be, more proactive on the front foot, winning those second balls, not letting players like him pick it up and walk through our midfield and score at the very end of a game. So very disappointing from the boys. It was not a good match. If anyone has any other comments to leave on that, please do. If not, I'm gonna move on and we're gonna talk about some different players who've been on international duty. First of all, we've got Alex Freeman, who, of course, has been on international duty with the USA. They played Ecuador. It was a 1-1, if nobody saw that, a 1-1 result against Ecuador. They're playing a 3-back or a 5-back, which is great, which is kind of what we hoped Pochettino would continue to do because that suits Alex to play that right wing back role. But Tim Weah got in as the right wing back to start this game and did pretty decently in that position. Of course, he's not, he is like a winger, but he's not really what Alex is in many ways. So I believe you could probably get away with that against less opposition, but in better games, you have better opposition, you kind of need that defensive right wing back. So maybe that's where Alex will be used more. Regardless, he is in the mix of the right wing back, right back conversation. Either way, the USA goes, he's played both positions for them now. I think that he is a real candidate to be involved in the U.S. soccer team for the World Cup. So every time that there is a call up and he gets another chance, it's positive news. I would be surprised if he leaves us now before the World Cup. I think he's probably gonna stay here until the World Cup regardless and hope for consistency in his club. That will mean consistency in the national team. As we've seen with Pochettino, that's what he's all about, which I personally think is great. There's no point for me in calling up guys for national team who don't play for their clubs, who are out of fitness, who are out of form, who aren't scoring week in, week out, who aren't contributing to their team week in, week out. Alex is doing that for us. He's going to continue to do that. So let's see if he can continue to get into the U.S. national team. And then this 5-back formation, it will really suit him. But he will have to compete with the likes of Weah and whoever else that Poch decides that he wants to throw in those right wing back positions. Moving on to other players in international duty, David Brekalo, of course, is away with Slovenia. They are going to play Kosovo on the 15th. So they're going to play Kosovo on Wednesday, and then next Monday. Sorry, now I'm getting this wrong. I got my dates wrong. They played Kosovo on Friday. Yes, they played Kosovo on Friday. Sorry, they played Switzerland on Friday. It was 0-0. They played Kosovo on Wednesday. And on Switzerland on Friday, he did start in that game. I saw that he got the start. So that's great. Playing right back. He can play everywhere across the back. So good for him. He played the full 90. So let's see if he also plays against Kosovo. So it's good. Often Brekalo has been called out and got like 3 minutes at the end of a game. So really great to see him get the start against Switzerland and get a 0-0. It's a very good, decent result indeed. All right. Marko Pasalic is away with Croatia, and they have played international friendlies. They played on Thursday against Czechia, and then they played on last night on Sunday against Gibraltar. On Thursday, it was a 0-0 against Czechia, and Marko did not start. The other Pasalic started, but Marko did not start. He came off the bench in the 62nd minute, didn't score any goals in that one. And then the 3-0 against Gibraltar, Marko, again, he actually started in this game, but he did, and he scored a goal in this game. This is the one that he scored a goal in. He played right back, according to Football. I didn't actually watch the game, and I haven't go see the highlights. I just saw on social that he started, and so if he played right back, that's crazy. I need to go back and watch the highlights and see if he played right back, but maybe that's just football being weird. But he scored a goal, which is awesome to see. Another guy who played international duty and scored a goal is Tyree Spicer. So Tyree Spicer called up for the Trinidadian or the I don't know, the Trini Tobago. I don't know how you abbreviate the Trini national team, and he played on Friday against Bermuda, and he scored a great goal. If you've not seen that, go check it out on social media. He kind of makes a solo run, like dives, twists, turns, and then slots it home past the Bermudan goalkeeper. So very good for him. He's going to play another game tomorrow night against Curacao. And so you can check out Tyrese Spicer there. And then two more players that were involved in international duty for the Vino Tinto for Venezuela. So Javier Otero and Gustavo Caraballo, both of which were called up for the Venezuelan first team. And they have played games. They played games against Argentina. So they played old Leo Messi himself, who was not there, but the rest of the boys were. They lost only 1-0. So a very respectable result for them. None of our guys came onto the field. So they were on the bench, but they were called up but not used ultimately. So that's just how it goes. They get a chance to be in this squad, as it were, but they're not making the field, which is fine. They're kind of just, I think, brought in to be sort of experimental guys to see how they can do and whether they're going to be an option for the future. So that is everybody, apart from Colin Guskey and Justin Ellis of OCB, which were called up for the U.S. the U.S. Youth National Team U19s. They played against Northern Ireland last week, and they're going to play against Belgium in the U19. So that's not the U20 team that's doing really well in the World Cup at the moment for U.S. national team. They're the U19, so one step below. That is everybody that went out on international duty or is out on international duty this week. They are all having their last game on Tuesday, so tomorrow, which means they'll all be back, or all of them will be back for this week's game against Toronto on Saturday. So I wouldn't worry about that. Only guys we're going to be missing will be guys who are injured, i.e., Jean Gerbet is ACL. That was confirmed in the week that last week he got the ACL injury. So he is out for the season, probably a lot of next season as well. So that's a real shame for Jean Gerbet because he has a real opportunity here with some midfield change around to see if he can get into the team. And now it's just not going to happen. Of course, I mentioned Jansen earlier, another one that's definitely injured, and I don't think we're going to be seeing in this last game or the playoffs. I will be shocked to see him again the rest of the season, but we will know more at the end of the week. Let's talk about something different. Let's talk about the Orlando Storm. All right. So the Orlando Storm. This is a UFL team. If you don't know what UFL is, that is the United Football League. There have been iterations of sort of spring football, as they would call it, quote unquote, here in the past with the Orlando Guardians, the Orlando Predators, and they often played at the Citrus Bowl. I think if you look at the kind of average attendance of UFL teams, it's in the sort of 5 to 10 to 15,000 range. If we're being really and a positive for them, probably on the lower end of that scale. So it doesn't really make sense, I believe, for a team like this to go and play in a really large venue like the Citrus Bowl. I guess they don't want to do that. The stadium, of course, Inter&Co Stadium, is owned privately. It is its own venue in its own right. Yes, the clubs play there. Yes, the stadium and the clubs are owned by the same overarching company, the Wolf Group, that owns all of this. But the stadium is essentially its own venue. So just like you would see at the Kia Center and everything that they do in terms of the amount of concerts they put on, the amount of other activities they do. I mean, they flipped that venue from basketball to hockey to concerts in no time. There is a precedent to be set that the Inter&Co Stadium can also do that and wants to do stuff like that, and wants to be able to host more events and make income from just being a rental stadium, essentially. And they have the right to do that. I think the only issue we would have as soccer fans is, we don't want football lines on the field. I think that is a number one no-no from everybody who watches soccer and remembers the old days of the Citrus Bowl and has watched minor league soccer in this country. That it's just watching soccer with football lines on the field is really horrible. Nobody wants that. So as long as that doesn't happen, and as long as we have a plan for the grass, which, like I said before, I believe they're probably going to want to change the grass in the offseason regardless. And you got to have faith in the grounds team that they know what they're doing, that they'll be able to have, I believe, 5 to 6 games of Orlando Storm in the springtime playing football on this grass and it not completely destroy the grass for soccer. I think we have faith that they know what they're doing there and that they're probably going to have to relay turf, do a lot of things between games, remove lines, that kind of stuff in order to be able to keep the right environment for Orlando City and Orlando Pride that we've always known on the right kind of field, but also be able to make this happen with the Orlando Storm and make their games happen too. I think it's very doable, but based on the current field condition, I think a lot of fans are rightfully so concerned about what this is going to do to our field. And to that, I say I think they have a plan, i.e., a new field or some kind of change of grass type. You have a lot of these sort of bringing in grass and adding in different synthetics into that mix of grass to be able to help the turf stay stronger and not break up as much, etc. Field technology is constantly changing. It's not something I know a huge amount about, but I think that if these people have degrees in this stuff and they know about this, then it should be able to make it happen safely and have a field that's going to be able to endure this and all the games that we want to put on as well. DC, I know in Audi Stadium, they have a UFL team. Of course, they have Washington Spirit play and they have the DC United game. So they are in the same boat as us. Not too dissimilar, climate a little bit different in the sense that we're more tropical. But I believe it can be done. And so we have to have faith that the stadium crew and the ownership are making a decision that they are going to be, they know what they're doing. If it doesn't and the field turns to, you know, turns really bad and it's just chunks everywhere and we got more injuries and players complaining about the condition of the field, etc., then I think they'll know what to do. They'll complain and we'll make our voices heard. But I think to condemn something and to be like, this is the worst thing ever before it's even happened and assume the worst, I think is kind of going really negative. Orlando Storm are a new team in town. We should kind of welcome them to our stadium and be graceful and hope that they should, have a successful time here. And maybe years from now, they'll have their own stadium and they won't want to be with us, etc. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. But I think that's sort of all the opinions I've heard from everybody and sort of all the interest that we've had on the Orlando Storm coming. If you have any opinions on this, please drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think on the Orlando Storm. All right, another piece of information that came out from the club recently. Inter&Co Stadium unveiled plans for a sideline social or an all-inclusive seating experience. So this is a change that's happening over on the this is the west side of the stadium. In fact, beneath the sort of the press box here. This is right next to the West Club section here. So in these sections between the West Club and the corner, from what I can tell, it's supposed to be quite cool. It's swivel seating with armrests and a drink rail. So it's very like sort of casual, tailgate style is what they call the food, like grab and go. I think it's going to be similar to what you see in the corner suite that's underneath the scoreboard, where you've got like large, you've got a lot of space around your seats. You've got a 360 swivel seat that you got like a table essentially, or a bar table in front of you in which you can, sit and eat, turn around, talk to people, do all that stuff. So it definitely seems like a more casual seating experience that they're trying to sell. I do know that there are a lot of fans that were in these sections that got moved. So I don't know how a lot of people feel about that, like whether they were really upset about it, whether they were that bothered. I know these sections are kind of sideline. They're almost like right on the edge of the really nice premium in the middle of the side seats. They're not quite that. So I think the club looks at them as something that they want to try and make more valuable and change. And varying seating throughout the stadium is interesting. It's not something I would expect in a soccer stadium. This is definitely more American sports venue, very more like Magic sort of thing, with a loge box almost style seating. So I think some people will go for this. I think it's a premium seat. I don't know how the people who got moved out of this section feel about it. I don't know how they dealt with that, whether they just said you're going to be moving, or they gave them the option to try and get in on this new seating in this section they were in. But it's going to be interesting, and more construction happening in the off season. This is all going to happen to make it new seating come the new season. So if you're someone who's bought one of these, or you're someone who's got moved out, drop a comment on social media, drop a comment here on the live. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what happened with this, and whether you're upset or whether you're excited. What people's thoughts are on the new sideline seating section. All right, David Albury, we have a comment from him. He says, please don't let it be AstroTurf on the turf. I don't think they'll go full AstroTurf. I think it's more likely that we'll have like a different type of grass or like a different type of bedding into the grass. I think there's a lot of things they can do with what they lay it on to like give it strength at the bottom so it can't pull out even if they don't specifically change the grass type, etc. So we'll have to see what we can do. Landon says, "What will the stadium capacity be after the changes?" I can't remember. I know Mike Gramajo, I think, posted about it. I have to go look. I think it's going down. That's what I would say for sure, because how is it not? I mean, they're eating up in many ways what was the space of two seats, really for one now. It looks like almost. So I think the stadium capacity will go down. To that, I'm not too concerned because we don't always seem to sell out very often anyway. So yeah, okay. So Mike Ramajo is here saying, told there will be impacts to same capacity. Um, so yeah, the exact number of capacity is unclear until the construction is getting underway. They'll also be adding 2 new open air private boxes as well that will debut in 2026. I don't know where those are going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if one is in that corner where they do a lot of events at the moment by the wall, sort of opposite to the scoreboard. That is another area of the stadium that they could potentially, make into some premium seating. It's a trend we're seeing a lot around stadiums at the moment. Is how can we make not more seats, but how can we make better seats that we can then sell for more money? And that seems to be the way that Orlando City is going with this. All right. Next on the agenda, let's talk about the playoff picture. All right. It's not looking great, gang. I'll just say that. Our playoff picture is bleak. I think at best, like, we can come seventh, really is the optimistic situation now with this last game. Um, just maintaining where we are. Nashville, who are above us, will be playing Miami, so that does help. We potentially, could hit them. New York are playing Seattle. We could end the season on 56 points. If we do end the season on 56 points, we potentially be in with our goal difference, we could potentially be in fourth, which is crazy to say even in this scenario. But that is essentially where everything goes wrong. So as you can see, here we are in seventh place. Nashville, New York, and Charlotte above us. Charlotte will be playing Philly. That is definitely a game they can lose. Like I said, New York will be playing Seattle. Nashville will be playing Miami. So these three teams arguably could all lose, and then we could come in fourth. But I don't actually want that to happen, because if we come in fourth and then everybody moves down one, we're going to come in fourth and Charlotte will come in fifth. And it's going to be a repeat of last year's playoff 3 game where we're going to have Charlotte again. We can play them at home, then away, then at home again. Great, we get to play a home game. I just exactly the same as last year, and I just think that's really boring. Personally, I don't want to see that. I'd rather, in some ways, we end up playing. I would love New York maybe to get a tie or something and get into. So sorry, that's another scenario we don't want. We don't want New York to end up fourth and us to end up fifth, because then we're gonna have to play 2 games away in New York. So if they somehow draw and then we win, that's a scenario that could happen. They could be fourth and we could be fifth, and we got to play 2 away games in a baseball stadium. We don't want that to happen. Nashville, if they win, they can get 57 points. And so if Nashville beat Miami and New York and Charlotte both lose, Nashville will end up in fourth, and then we would end up in fifth. So we'd have 2 games away at Nashville. That's not bad. But all of this is predicated on us getting the 56 points, beating Toronto. If we don't beat Toronto, or if we only get a draw against Toronto, we're going to be 7th, 8th, 9th, 4th, 5th, 6th are only opportunities really if we win against Toronto away. It can go so many ways. That the East is so tight. We are in the middle of this bunch in the East, which is incredibly tight. From 4th all the way down to 9th is only separated by 5 points. So, for example, if Columbus win their game, they're up on 54 points where Nashville are. So not only from 4th to 5th to 6th can change, but 7th, 8th, 9th can all change. There's a lot of different scenarios. I think most likely, based on this website here, which I like to look at, that kind of gives you percentage odds, we are most likely 40% most likely to end up in 7th place, which is where we are now. So I'll take it. I think 7th place wouldn't be too bad. We would then have to play, if everything stays as is, we would then play Cincy away. If we stay in 7th and Miami end up in 2nd, then we're gonna do 2 away games at Miami. I don't know if we want to do that. We all know what happens when we go play away in Miami. It just doesn't ever end well for us in big games, it seems. So yeah, it's all down to the last game. We got to win against Toronto, but even if we win against Toronto, we don't know what's going to happen. There's so many scenarios of teams winning, teams losing. Chicago Fire will be playing New England, so that's an issue. They're probably going to win. Red Bulls against Columbus, that's a tight one. The Red Bulls are out, so it's like everybody's in the playoffs, quote unquote, because no one's coming lower than 9th. But Columbus probably want to not be in the play-in game, so they're gonna fight against New York to get out of that situation. Chicago are gonna be fighting against the Revs. It's not really any sort of easy gimme games here for anybody, so we've got to do our best against Toronto and make sure that we finish the season strong. We haven't won since we beat Nashville in that 3-2, and we haven't had a clean sheet in I couldn't tell you how long. So we have to score multiple goals against Toronto. Let's go ahead and move forward and look at that Toronto game. We got a couple other comments here. Landon saying, if we go 4th, that would be crazy. He also said, I'd rather play Cincy over Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, I agree with you on that, Landon. I think we all would rather play Cincy over Fort Lauderdale. They will be a problem if we go down there. All right. Toronto, last game, lost to LAFC 2-0. This was their team. I mean, Mihailovic is the guy that they brought. They bought him from Colorado Rapids for like $7 million in the summer. It's a really strange move. They got rid of their, Italian contingent that was weighing them down. It's just there's not a lot here to get excited about. I don't think, I don't think there's really a team here in Toronto that they know who they are yet. They are still very confused about what they're doing, I think, with their future. I think they're waiting on players to come in. Mihailovic has been reasonable, I guess, but nothing to really write home about. And he's their star player. They're not a good team in the East, but we've seen this year when we play mediocre teams, what happens to Orlando City. It doesn't always end well for us. I think about the Toronto game. The Toronto game. I think about the Montreal game. I think about other games in like the LA Galaxy game. I know we were tired, but the DC United game. What else? Who else did we lose to? We shouldn't have lost to. There was plenty of those this season. Draws, losses to mediocre teams in this league that we should be beating. results that we should be getting that we did not get. And that's sort of the case here with Toronto. I mean, it could definitely be the case against Toronto. It's a 6 p.m. kickoff, which I find, really odd with the 7:30. Like everything's at 6 p.m. now because they're playing East and West all at the same time. Toronto, in terms of their form, it's pretty bad. I mean, they love a draw. They drew 2-2 to Chicago. They drew 1-1 with Miami. They drew 1-1 with Columbus. They drew 1-1 with the Revs. Like they're not terrible. Like, and this is what I mean in the sense that we can fall into a draw trap against Toronto very easily. We have done it this year against many teams that we should have beaten. They've done it against teams that they shouldn't really. A result 1-1 for them against Crew and Miami and Chicago. Arguably good results for them this year. So they're going to be looking at this last game of the season and say, can we do something again? Of course, it doesn't really matter for them. They have nothing to play for. They're down here in the playoffs. Not in the playoffs, sorry, way down in 12th position with 29 points. As I mentioned, for us, it's a pretty vital game. It's a game that we really definitely have to win. Head-to-head wise, on the record with us, they have 9 wins. There's 3 draws, and we have 10 wins. Most recently, earlier in the season, we did beat them 4-2. So that is a good sign. All right. We should do a lineup for this game. I think honestly, it's gonna be our strongest lineup, like we know. It's gonna be some questions over who is available in the back line. I think all the guys will come back, so I'm not too worried about that. What I am concerned about is the injuries that we've had. So let's pull up the lineup builder and we can do that together. All right, we got some comments. What is Landon saying? Spicy T will haunt his old team. Yeah, don't forget this is Spicer's old team here. They didn't want him anymore. David Albury saying, any more rumors about Richarlison? No, there are not any more rumors about Richarlison. That was something that came up last week. If anyone didn't see it, clearly Ricardo had gone to Tottenham and had conversations with Richarlison and his camp about coming over to Orlando City, doing, being that face, the Brazilian face of the club. From reports, it's saying that they wanted like 40 million, which is, Richarlison's, I think this is coming up on his last year of his contract. We're not going to pay like that crazy amount of money. Eventually, if they don't sell him, they'll let it run out. Maybe we'll go back in, bring him in on a free then. But I think what it does speak to is, and a lot of people have been asking for, is like really go out and spend some money and do something big and bring in that kind of star player that, like a Nani, like a Kaká, like we've had before. And someone like Richarlison would be of that level. So if we're willing to really go out and find a big player and make a project of him, I think that's very exciting. I also think that it says a lot about, Luis Muriel, that we've suspected that he's probably not going to be here next year. This is most likely his last year. If we're going after strikers and going after guys like Richarlison, we're going to have hopefully Ojeda and hopefully Pasalic here next year. You really just need that kind of last DP. And if they're going to be someone of that level, like Richarlison, then I think that's really ambitious and exciting to see in the offseason who it is that we end up bringing in. All right, let's look at the lineup here for Montreal for Toronto. We've got. Do we think Muriel is still going to start potentially up front? It could be Duncan. I feel like he did play better than Muriel, but It seems like Oscar's faving Muriel still up there at the moment to start, with Duncan being more of an impact striker. David Brecalo will be back at left back. I think it might still be Atwester and Kyle Smith. I don't really think we have too many other options. Colin Gusky will be back, but hasn't really played much. I arguably would do this, actually put Dagger in the midfield and when Alex is coming back. So you can put your back four back together with Brecalo, Jansen, Schlegel, Freeman, of course, Pedro in goal. And then Atuesta and Dagger in the midfield, I think is the best option. Maybe you'll see Kyle Smith, but I think Dagger down, especially after that goal and the way he performed in the first half of the last game, should be that midfielder now for the rest of the year next to Atuesta. Cesar, I don't know where Cesar is. I don't know whether because his contract is expiring, there's something there, whether he's injured, I don't know. But we have not seen Cesar in a while. And I wonder where he is at this moment in time. Wilder coming back from injury, I don't think it's going to be this season. Maybe they'll do something crazy and push him to come back for the playoffs, but I think that would be kind of irresponsible. Unless we really have to do it. I think we should promote guys from OCB, give Gusky minutes, see who else can fill in there. Taifi can play in it right back to give Dagger more time in the midfield, etc. There are other options. Landon says, will Jansen be ready for Sunday? Sorry, of course, yes, I need to take out Jansen because he will be injured, as we talked about all game. Which then means I think probably Kyle Smith is going to have to go there. Unless you're going to see this with Brecalo and then Adrien Marin. That could also happen. I don't know which I prefer. In some ways, I kind of prefer having Brecalo at left back and putting Smith next to Schlegel. I don't think they'll do that. I think Marin will get in again. I think Brecalo, Schlegel, Freeman. Thank you, Landon. Sorry, I talked all game about Jansen being out, and then I put him in the lineup. Just so used to having him back there. But yes, looking at this back four, I think that's probably what you're going to see. I do think I want to see Dagger in the midfield. Maybe you could put Dagger at left back, but they didn't do it this game. Thomas Williams could have been brought on last game for Jansen, and Oscar didn't go that route. So I just don't know. I don't know if he's ever going to get a chance. There's been several times this year that we've had center back issues, and he technically is our fourth center back. He is an MLS rostered player, but he never gets a chance. He's playing reasonably well for OCB, not incredibly well, but having a decent season in a team like that. I just think we've always, and I've said this on the pod many times, we have an issue with the lack of center backs. And I think that it's caught up to us several times this year, especially because Brecalo is playing left back all year, and he's one of the three center backs. So it's not even, he's been used as the left back. So really you have two center backs in Jansen and Schlegel with no backup behind either of them. Every time one of them's out, you move Brecalo in the middle, then you have an issue at left back, etc. So I think our defensive depth has been bad all year. And I think that it's something that has hurt us in several games. Booty Sweat says, over under on Spicer actually getting the start. That is something that could happen purely because it's his old team. And Spicy Boy, scored in the Trinidadian game, and maybe Oscar's like, hey, he's got something to prove against his old team. I'm going to start him. The reason I don't think that will happen is, again, because Oscar likes Angulo's work rate on defense. And if Marin is in left back again, I think Oscar wants Angulo to help Marin as much as possible, because he is just not able to do it at the moment. Luis in the chat. Luis not able to be here. He says under. He says under on Spicer playing. Spicer is back up. Angulo gets the start. Thank you, John, for holding the fort. Thank you, Luis, buddy. Miss ya. And hope you're enjoying your time off with your family. Alrighty. I think that's everything we have on the lineup. Let me pull up the score prediction, and then we can do that as well. Anyone else got any comments on Toronto or the final day of the season? Let me know in the chat where you think we're going to end in our final position. Like I said, I think it's going to be most likely about 7th for us. I think is probably what's going to happen. All right, last game, Luis predicted 3-1. I predicted 2-1. It was 2-1, but it was not 2-1 to us. It was 2-1 to Vancouver. The final MLS game of the season is here. We are going to play Toronto, and let me know in the chat what you think the score is going to be. I'm going to go with a hopeful I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win 3-1. I'm going to stick with my 3-1, or I had 2-1 last game, but I'm going to go 3-1. If Luis, you want to drop yours in the chat, I'll put that in here. If anyone else is interested, let me know. Booty Sweat, he says, I agree. Angulo's probably starting, just killing me not to see Spicer getting these minutes. I agree on that. I think that Spicer is really good in moments, but like, I don't know if he's going to do it over 90. In some ways, I think he's better as a sub that comes on against tired legs. I think he has these moments of brilliance, but Angulo also does a lot as well. We'll see. I think right now Angulo's still got the spot. Luis says, I asked the club about Jansen, no response, so they're keeping it under wraps. He says, I'm trying to find out though. Yeah, I think they're not going to tell us much at the moment. Landon says 3-2 win. That would be fun and exciting. Imari Williams says 2-1 to City. Luis is going with a 2-1 to Orlando. No one's got the clean sheet, sadly. No one feeling the clean sheet. It's been a while since we've had one of those, so understandable indeed. Alrighty, everybody who's here today, I appreciate y'all. I have been here running solo. We talked about the Vancouver game and how frustrating that was. I think, like I said, a lot of people, that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were, on the season, and they've all sort of given up hope entirely. I don't think that it's over, but we need to see something in this Toronto game that says we are a team that is, going to win. We're a team that is, playing well, being clinical, scoring multiple goals a game. We need to see some spark. We need to see some excitement. We need to see, a bit of dominance, really, against a team like Toronto, because it's going to come to the playoffs and we're playing a lot better teams. And we need to see that fight before the final day. I've said before that it really doesn't matter in all the ways where we end in the playoffs. As long as we're in the playoffs and we're going into the playoffs in good form. That hasn't been happening recently. It's been getting, I think progressively worse, especially the second half against Vancouver. We were really outplayed a lot of that. And yeah, we were missing guys, but it was a very disappointing collapse. Not what you want to see at this point in the season. So we need to see a strong response for the boys. Toronto is a team that's definitely beatable. I want to see goals like that one we saw in the first half from Dagger and Duncan. That sort of clinical counterattacking finishing when we get up the field, get our chances, make sure we put the ball in the back of the net. And then we can go into the playoffs with a bit of positivity and a bit of hope, and see what we could do. Regardless, at the end of this season, and I said this last week, I think we are in for change, whether it's going to be a major overhaul of the squad or whether maybe we're going to have a manager change. I don't know, maybe both of those things. We don't know. But I do think that we need to see something change in the offseason from this team because it's been tougher this year in the East, but we've really taken a step backwards in where we ended. Luis says also last game per sources, Mercado Morera was cozying up and pulling aside to talk with Seb Berhalter, something to consider since Arujo might be gone at the end of the season and Gervais is injured. I wouldn't mind a bit of Sebastian Berhalter. I gotta say, Luis, he definitely he's a player that I have a lot of time for. A player that got called up into the international team as well recently, and I think is a good player. You know, some people might have reservations about his dad, but I think he's a very, very good player. And we're going to need midfielders. So maybe Ricardo's hitting up Seb. Maybe he wants to come down and play in the warm out of the cold of Vancouver. We'll see, but I think we are in for changes this offseason regardless, and I would say major changes. Regardless. But let's support the boys the last day of the season. Let's support the boys in the playoffs. We gotta, not throw in the towel. We got to see what happens and make sure we see out the season and hopefully get a win against Toronto and then go into the playoffs with a bit of positivity. Luis says, I would like that move also. It would mean that Carta would sign with Orlando if that is in the works. We'll see. He said double pivot 2.0. Yeah, Wilder is an interesting one to see whether he's going to come back and what's going to happen with him. We're going to definitely do some off-season content, kind of talking about, whose contract's up and what we expect. I'm sure once the season ends, a lot of those announcements will start coming out, and we'll have more notice for y'all. So to everybody who is here today, thank you very much. If you could go ahead and drop a like on the video for me. If you're watching on YouTube, that would be awesome. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify later, please can you go ahead and give us a rating out of 5 stars, whatever you think we are worth. That would be great. We really appreciate that. I've also done a survey. Let me bring that up real quick. Let me find it, and I can show you all you guys. So if you go onto social media and you go into most of the social medias, you go into the pinned assets at the top of there, you should be able to find that we have a I'm going to find it. We have here it is. Survey out. So we've had 19 responses already. Thank you to everybody who has responded to the survey. If you've not yet, go onto social media. If it's not pinned at the top on that social media, just scroll down in the feed. You'll find it was posted recently. It is a survey. We're asking you guys lots of questions about really what you think of the show and sort of your comments on what you'd like to see, how you interact with the show, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you to all 19 people who've already responded. If you've not done so and you are a subscriber or a regular watcher of the show, regular listener of the show, please go ahead and go over there. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. It really helps us to understand what you guys like, what you don't like, how to get ready for another year of Loud and Proud Orlando, what we want to do differently, et cetera, et cetera. And as also, if you've not done so, go ahead and follow us on all those social media channels. Like we said, we're on X and Blue Sky and Threads and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those places. So go ahead and drop a like and a follow for Loud and Proud Orlando. I will be back in about 15 minutes to talk everything Orlando Pride and everything NWSL related as they get close to the end of their season. They've got a Champions Cup game on Wednesday, which is really big, as well as another game at the end of the week. So we're wrapping up the seasons here for both Orlando City and Orlando Pride. Thank you to everybody who is here in the chat. We've got a couple more comments before I go. Landon says, I still believe. And Gila Karma says, we are exactly where we want to be for the playoffs. Let's go. I love that positivity. All we can say is the team is here. We got one more game. Support the boys, and vamos, Orlando.